Xi Jinping may have thought his influence on the global stage was rock solid as one of the P5 nations, which referred to the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. But little did he expect that Indian Prime Minister Modi had quietly taken a detour and overtaken him, leaving him behind. During Modi's recent visit to Ukraine, he only spoke with Zelensky for 2 hours, but the impact far outweighed any flowery speeches. Modi is now playing the role of an elder statesman, calling for Ukraine to cease fire and start negotiations, even pretending to be willing to mediate for peace. But what's really on his mind isn't peace, it's how to take advantage of Russia's struggles and the war to pull Putin over to his side, weakening the China-Russia relationship. Slowly, he aims to erode Russia's influence across the Eurasian continent, positioning India as the next undeniable global power. Modi's game plan is sharp and cunning. While this war may seem to be a direct result of escalating Russia-Ukraine tensions, beneath the surface it's a far more intricate geopolitical drama. Russia's military actions have clearly been quietly stoked by China, whose hidden agenda is to drag the US focus away from the Indo-Pacific and back to Europe. The strategy is all too familiar, a replay of the old Soviet tactics from the Cold War era. Back then, the Soviet Union stirred up the Korean and Vietnam Wars to pull the US away from Europe. Sound familiar? In the end, the fire in Ukraine didn't lure Biden in as expected. So China and Russia shifted their focus to stirring up trouble in the Middle East. From Hamas provoking Israel to Hezbollah in Lebanon getting hit, and Iran dealing with internet unrest. It's clear that China and Russia are pulling the strings behind these moves. Their aim? To create chaos in the Middle East and ease the pressure from the Ukraine conflict. This isn't just random turbulence, it's actually a carefully calculated plan. On the Ukraine issue, there's a clear divide between the US Democrats and Republicans. Trump's Republican advocates for a watch-and-wait approach, letting European nations wrestle with the conflict while the US can seize opportunity to regain control over Europe. The ideal is to bring both Europe and Russia into the US fold and then unite them to contain China in the Western Pacific. With this in mind, the military-industrial complex within the Republican Party has even tried to block US military aid to Ukraine. But when the Ukrainian forces brought the fight into Russia territory, the rhetoric from Trump and his supporters quieted down. It seems this escalation has prompted some changes in how the Republican Party views the Ukraine issue. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is determined to weaken Putin's power before leaving office on January 20th next year. To achieve this, Biden even announced that he won't run for re-election, signaling his commitment to resolving the Ukrainian situation. At the same time, the CCP, which supports Russia, is also figuring out how to weather this stormy period. But Biden's game plan isn't limited to Ukraine. He's also taking the opportunity to pressure authoritarian leaders like Bangladesh Hasina, Venezuelans Maduro, and Belarus Lukashenko. At the same time, he's urging Israel to avoid any large-scale actions against Iran, so the US can focus its resources on supporting Ukraine. In short, America's military focus remains on the Indo-Pacific. As for Russia, the strategy revolves around enhancing nuclear deterrence rather than direct confrontation. When it comes to Iran, the goal is to containment, using diplomatic pressure to avoid escalation. Amidst this, Modi has stepped in, ramping up interactions with both Russia and Ukraine. He seized on Russia's isolation, aiming to pull Putin closer to India. Modi has put a big offer on the table. If Russia withdraws from Ukraine, India will significantly increase its energy and weapons imports from Russia, positioning itself as Russia's key strategic partner. Despite India's current reliance on arms from the US, European, Israel, and South Korea, its massive demand easily absorbs Russian supplies. Modi is in a hurry to mediate between Russia and Ukraine because he fears Russia might lean entirely towards China. That's why he aggressively courting Putin, hoping to solidify ties between the nations. By doing so, India gains leverage against China and strengthens its hand in negotiation with the US and Europe. Modi's goal is to secure greater advantages for India in this global power struggle while skillfully balancing relationships and maintaining strategic independence. His moves are flawless. Moreover, Modi sees new geopolitical shifts emerging in South Asia and the Middle East. Bangladesh is rising, Pakistan's political landscape is changing, and Iran's threat is growing. If Modi can link South Asia, Central Asia, West Asia, and Russia into a strategic chain, India could dominate the heart of the Eurasian continent, emerging as a key global power. But India's broader trajectory still leans towards the US, Europe, Japan, South Korea, and Israel. Whether Russia sides with India depends on how the war progresses, the power play involved, and Putin's decision. If Ukraine continues its strong offensive, Putin's regime could collapse at any moment. In such a scenario, Russia might lean towards India, seeking a balance between China and India, though its primary focus would still be on Europe. The Ukraine war has become a defining moment in the 21st century geopolitics. The old order is crumbling and the new one has yet to emerge. As a rising power, India is trying to seize this moment, positioning itself as a key global player. No one should underestimate its ambitions. Israel delivers major blow to Hezbollah. Israel hasn't been idle in the Middle East, deploying hundreds of fighter jets and drones in a relentless bombing campaign that wiped out Hezbollah's rocket launchers in Lebanon. Hezbollah's and stockpiled thousands of launchers near the border, ready to fire tens of thousands of rockets into Israel. But before they could make their move, Israel swooped in and disrupted the plan. Hezbollah managed to launch just 320 rockets, most of which were intercepted, causing minimal damage, only hitting a chicken coop. This wasn't a random attack by Israel. With intelligence gathered from US satellites, reconnaissance plans, and ground operatives, Israel knew Hezbollah's movement inside and out. They struck decisively before Hezbollah could fully mobilize, crippling what would have been one of the group's biggest operations in years. If those rockets had all been launched, even Israel's Iron Dome defense system would have been overwhelmed. Hezbollah's aggressive stance was all backed by its powerful allies. While Iran wasn't eager to provoke Israel, pressures from Russia and support from China pushed Tehran to gamble and send Hezbollah to the front lines. This time, though, it looks like Iran's gamble didn't pay off. Israel boasts the most advanced in air defense systems in the world. Arrow 3, THAAD, Patriot, Iron Dome, and even laser defense systems currently in development. Together, they form an impenetrable aerial iron curtain. But what really concerns Israel isn't so much Hezbollah's rockets, it's Hamas hiding among civilians to launch attacks. For Israel, Hezbollah is a lesser threat, and their goal is clear: weaken Hezbollah to the point where it can't recover. With internal factions in Lebanon already opposing Hezbollah, the group is likely to take heavy losses, even if it doesn't collapse like Hamas in the next year or two. Meanwhile, Biden has been urging both sides to calm down, hoping to let Russia and Ukraine settle their conflict first. But Israel isn't the type to wait for advice. They could decide to strike at any moment. This has forced Biden to quietly prepare at least 2 carrier strike groups and a few amphibious assault ships, ready to launch a massive air campaign if needed. As for Russia, the situation in Ukraine is growing more dire, and their Middle Eastern proxies are losing effectiveness. No matter how much Iran pushes the envelope, its medium-range and cruise missiles will likely be intercepted by US and Israel's defense system. The idea of seriously hitting Israel is almost a fantasy. The Caucasus is experiencing growing turbulence. The Russia-Ukraine war hasn't just shaken Eastern Europe. It also has completely disrupted the delicate balance in this sensitive region. Azerbaijan sees the opportunity to challenge Russia's dominance in the area, while Russia's long-term ally, Armenia, has turned toward the west. Georgia, riding the momentum of the Ukraine war, is pushing for faster integration into the European Union. As tensions escalate in the Caucasus, Putin has been forced to take swift action. In late August, he embarked on a rapid tour visiting Azerbaijan, Kabardino-Balkaria, and other Caucasus nations, hoping to stabilize the situation. Putin's visit had a clear purpose: to persuade Azerbaijan not to cut off Russia's vital oil route to Europe at this critical moment. More importantly, he feared that Azerbaijan might support Islamic separatist movement in Russia's North Caucasus region, such as Chechnya, Dagestan, and Ingushetia, potentially destabilizing Moscow. Putin also sought to ensure the uninterrupted flow of Russian goods through Azerbaijan to Iran. But reality hit Putin hard. When Azerbaijan's president, Ilham Aliyev, received Putin, it felt more like a subordinate meeting his superior. Although they signed a few economic agreements, no substantial consensus was reached in political or security matters. Azerbaijan isn't in a rush to meet Putin's demands, knowing it has other cards to play. The Caucasus has now become a new battleground for global power plays. Azerbaijan's, bolstered by its close ties with Turkey, has solidified its position in the Nagorno-Karabakh dispute and expanded its influence in the Caucasus and Central Asia. Meanwhile, Israel has taken advantage of its security cooperation with Azerbaijan to set up an extensive intelligence network along Iran's northern border. Europe, eager to tap into Central Asian oil supplies to compensate for the energy shortfall caused by the Russian-Ukraine war, is also looking to strengthen ties with Azerbaijan. Central Asian countries see this as an opportunity to forge closer relations with Europe. All of this has put Azerbaijan in a more advantageous position in its geopolitical game. The Caucasus is no longer a region where Russia holds all the cards. China and Russia align for global strategy. Analyzing the situation in India, the Middle East, and the Caucasus reveal a deeper trend. Under the backdrop of Ukraine war, global geopolitics is undergoing profound shifts. In this changing landscape, Xi Jinping and Putin are driving a China-Russia alliance aimed at shaping a new global order. Following the 20th Central Committee's third plenary session, Xi Jinping disappeared from the public eye for 4 weeks. Rumors swirled about a coup for him being sidelined, but in reality, Xi was busy plotting in secret. When he re-emerged, the moves were immediate. In late August, Chinese Premier Li Qiang led a massive delegation, including 2 vice premiers, to Russia. The two nations inked agreements across political, economic, technological, and financial sectors. China went all out, with top officials from every ministry present, fully engaging with Russia's counterparts. Together, China and Russia are leveraging platforms like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS to challenge the US-dominated global financial system. On August 25th, Chinese strategist Zhang Weiwei boldly declared US military dominance is doomed and the credibility of the US dollar is about to collapse. Though it sounded like a provocative prediction, it was really a message conveying China's resolve. Zhang is known for his careful choice of words, which likely signal that China is planning something serious. The military cooperation between China and Russia has been even more striking. The head of Chinese army forces personally led a delegation to Russia. They included armored units, equipment, operations, and more, with participation from the Eastern and Northern Theater Commands. Such high-level exchanges involving top military commanders are rare even between the US and NATO, usually only occurring when conflicts escalate. The intensity of China-Russia military exchanges strongly suggests they are preparing for potential military actions. Without Xi's approval, such moves would be unthinkable. China and Russia have let their eyes locked on Ukraine for a while now. Beijing and Moscow know exactly what's at stake. This war isn't just aimed at Putin, it's about dismantling Russia itself. The fact that China's army chief is personally involved signals that something big is in the works. China could be preparing to engage directly in the Ukraine conflict and perhaps even extend its focus to the Baltics. All eyes are on what comes next. According to inside sources, during Xi Jinping's 4-week out of the spotlight, he reportedly held several top-secret meetings laying out plans to use the Ukraine war to expand China's global influence. He also strategized on escalating tensions in the Taiwan Strait and the Korean Peninsula to divert US's attention. Participants had to turn off their phones, and the locations were carefully chosen, held in unremarkable homes and schools to avoid detection by intelligence agencies. Xi repeatedly stressed the need for utmost secrecy to avoid tipping off foreign powers. Xi and Putin see the Ukraine war as a golden opportunity to advance their global ambitions. By sowing chaos in the Eurasian continent, they hope to weaken the US while simultaneously preparing to fuel their own expansionist agendas. On multilateral platforms like the United Nations, China and Russia have been actively courting developing countries, aiming to build a coalition to counter the US-led order. Over the years, Xi has cemented his power with ruthless determination and masterful political maneuvering. He not only vanquished all his rivals within the party, but also steered China down a path of extreme nationalism. To maintain his grip on power, Xi is willing to go to any lengths, projecting his authoritarian vision across the globe. In his eyes, the struggle for global dominance with the US is central to his political legacy. His aggressive support for Russia, assertive moves in the South China Sea, and military threats towards Taiwan are all manifestations of this grand ambition. Under Xi Jinping's strategy, China is steadily advancing towards its goal of competing for global dominance with the United States. China's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, its aggressive actions in the South China Sea, and its military threats against Taiwan all reflects this ambition. Xi's ruthless methods and authoritarian mindset have become the greatest threat to global freedom and democracy. So how would the US respond? Many are puzzled by why the US hasn't made any direct moves against China. The truth is, the US rarely shows all its cards up front. While the world seems calm on the surface, the US may already be setting the pieces in motion behind the scenes. The collapse of the Soviet Union and the current situation in Bangladesh serves as prime examples. Once the US decides to act, it may be too late for China to reverse its course. When it comes to how the US might react, people often ask, why hasn't the US taken action against China yet? The US doesn't announce its plans ahead of time. By the time everything seems quiet, it's likely that the groundwork has already been laid. The US operates through a complex process, layer by layer, often in secret. By the time the steps are complete and it reaches the execution stage, the media will begin reporting and discussions will emerge. But at that point, China may find itself out of options, much like the collapse of the Soviet Union or the current situation in Bangladesh. In summary, China and Russia are gearing up for a new phase of confrontation with the West, and the US response could come at any moment. The global landscape is shifting rapidly, and we may soon reach a critical moment in this great power competition.